Resolutions by Nicholas Vrekar. Claire had said she was going to the party. She had said so on Facebook, so it was too late to back out now. If she stayed at home, she'd feel guilty for not going. It had been a while since she had gone out, spent time with anyone in person. She grabbed her coat, slipped on her gloves, and stepped out into the cold December night. She had layers upon layers, but even past the tank top, sweater, hoodie, and coat, it was still cold, the kind of cold that felt like it was icing up her eyes for daring to keep them open. Her car struggled to a start, but it did start. If it didn't, that would have been an excellent excuse. She shifted gears and sped off down the road, and slowly but surely hot air filled the inside of her car. Harry and Dana's house was in the suburbs, a 2-story home that stood out from the rest, due to all of the cars parked in the driveway and along the street outside. Claire pulled over alongside the road a pair of houses down. There was a closer empty spot, but it probably wasn't a good idea to finish off the year attempting to parallel park. She shut off the engine and stepped back out into the cold. She tucked her hands into her armpits and rushed across the sidewalk. There was a sound in the distance of indiscernible 80s synth that grew louder as she approached the front door. She rang the doorbell and stepped back and waited, the cold icing up her eyes. Dana opened up the door with one hand, a colorful drink in a martini glass in the other. She cried out, "Claire, get in, it's cold." Claire smiled, her cheekbones stiff. She stepped inside. Dana closed the door. "You can put your coat in there and your shoes there." "Okay." She added her shoes to the collection and shoved her coat into the closet. Claire walked into the living room and said hello to Harry and Mark. Harry was all right, Mark was drunk. She said hello to Ben, sitting at the end of a couch, slowly sipping a beer. 3 children ran by as she stepped into the kitchen. She said hello to Andrew and waved to Quincy. Tina said hello and Stella reached in for a hug. Stella offered to mix one of the colorful martinis in the kitchen. She had been taking bartending classes on Sunday nights. Stella said, "I don't have all the ingredients I'd like to choose from here, but you work with what you've got. It looks neat and tastes like a gummy bear. I can deal with that." Stella handed the glass over and Claire took a sip. It did not taste like a gummy bear. Stella said, "How is it?" Claire coughed, a bit strong. "Word of warning, if William offers you a shot of Malort, do not drink it. It's stronger. It's disgusting." She nodded and said, "Thanks for the warning." Claire carried her colorful blend of alcohol out onto the patio. In the limited safety of the patio heater, she said hi to Beverly and Jane. Paul was leaning against a rail, looking out into the dark of night, vaping. He was talking to someone she never met. She stood beside him and waited while Paul talked about how the Bears were really going to have a good season this year. She stepped back inside. There were more people in the living room now, sitting around the television. The TV was muted, and over unseen speakers she could hear Bon Jovi singing about when to live. In the corner of the TV screen, a timer counted down to the end of the year. In the basement, a small group of people stood around a bar talking about sports. William offered a shot of Malort. Claire turned it down. Thomas, Petra, Linda, and Edgar were playing beer pong in a corner, and in the back, Shrek 2 was playing on a widescreen television. She found a comfortable chair and sat down. She sipped at her colorful drink until there was nothing left but psychedelic residue. Claire looked for a spot to set her glass down, but found nothing. There was a distant table past the beer pong, already covered with discarded glasses and empty cans of beer. She held her empty glass in her hand, balancing it against her knee. The game of beer pong ended and then started again, ended and started again. Huey Lewis sang about love, and Rick Astley sang about the things he would never do. She liked the song unironically. She could just get up and dance. She had danced to the song before, in her room, when no one was looking. She could try her hand at beer pong. She probably wouldn't be good, but the people playing didn't seem to be good either. She wondered how many carpet fibers ended up in the beer from all the missed shots. She could get up and she could play, and after a few drinks, maybe that wouldn't matter so much. Linda said, "Hey, Claire, wanna play?" Claire looked from the beer pong table to Linda. No thanks." Claire left the basement. The living room was crowded now. There was an empty spot between the couch and the recliner. She squeezed her way around the coffee table to the vacancy. Rick Astley had been cut off, and the volume on the television had been turned up to compensate. On the TV, there was a man in a red tuxedo and a woman in a short silver dress, standing in front of a small crowd of people gathered in a decorated hall, talking about New Year's resolutions they would definitely follow up on. No one seemed to be watching what was on. She felt tense, in the arch of her foot pressed against the floor, in her knee, in the wrist of the hand that held the empty glass. The TV seemed louder than it needed to be, and it still wasn't audible over the people in the living room. And all she could hear were fragments of conversations, fractured words and sentences without context that blurred between each other, creating an indiscernible mix of phrases. And she had no idea when it became so warm, only it wasn't just warm, it was heat, just a wave of heat that she could barely breathe in. It was empty on the patio, just her and the portable heater. Even with the heat on, she could feel the cold out there, lingering, hoping for a way in. She leaned against the deck railing and looked out into the night sky, at the stars above. Outside it was mostly quiet. The insulation from the house couldn't keep all of the noise in, but out here it didn't feel so encompassing. She didn't have to be there to watch the ball drop, the countdown end, the declaration that an old set of numbers had ended and a new set of numbers would begin. The new year would arrive right on time, right on schedule, without worrying about whether or not she was there to witness its social introduction. The world would keep on spinning, the stars in the sky blinking in and out, regardless of her own awareness. The patio door slid open, and some of that noise spilled out just for a moment before it shut again. Dana walked over and stood beside the patio railing. She said, "Want me to get Stella to make you another one of those?" Claire looked at her empty glass. "I have to drive home." Dana nodded and pulled out a bottle of water from a nearby cooler. "That's fair. Maybe some water instead?" "Yeah, okay." She took the water and set the empty glass down on the patio table. "I've been trying to drink more water myself. Less soda, less beer. That's my New Year resolution, you know. To take care of myself. My body is my temple and all that." Claire pointed at the can of beer Dana was holding in her hand. "What about that?" "What about it?" "Less soda, less beer?" "Well, that's for next year. It's still this year, and I haven't resolved to do anything this year." "Isn't it going to be next year in like a minute?" Dana leaned back and chugged the beer down. She tossed the empty can onto the patio table and rolled off of the side. She pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. "And with a minute to spare. Come on, let's go inside and welcome the new year." The crowd had moved to fill in even the empty spaces between the recliner and the couch in the living room. Claire found an empty spot in the doorway, between the living room and the kitchen, and pressed herself against the doorframe until she could see the television. The people in the room shouted, 10. The new year was so close. 9. Claire tried to remember what it was they said about New Year resolutions. 8. She could do whatever she wanted, make them whatever she wanted them to be. 7. She could become whatever she wanted to become. 6. The old year and its insecurities were a thing of the past. 5. The new year offered with it hope. 4. Or at least the possibility of hope. 3. She wondered what kind of person she wanted to become. 2. She knew she wasn't that kind of person, not yet. 1. But she could be. Happy New Year! The resounding shouts lasted for a minute, and then the TV was turned back down and the music was turned back up. This time it was a song about two lonely people meeting on a midnight train. Claire wandered from the living room into the kitchen, down into the basement. On the television downstairs, the DVD menu for Shrek 2 was playing. Quincy, Harry, and Dana were standing over by the bar. Dana held a water bottle in one hand and the cap in the other. Claire stood alongside them and listened for a while, until they all dispersed, one after another. She walked back upstairs and found the recliner empty. She sat down and looked for a spot to set her bottle of water, but the coffee table was out of reach. She leaned back and watched the silent television. The music and the conversations grew louder, and she could feel her muscles tense. She took a deep breath and tried to relax. The end.